friends, this is Casper the Boy Diviner here today, and I wanted to talk about the Star Spinner Tarot. So many people already have done the walkthroughs of this deck. You can watch those for a full walkthrough. I really enjoyed this deck. I really wanted this deck. I think you can tell from how frustrated I was with Book Depository for not sending it to me when I pre-ordered. But that was also more of an ethical thing than a time thing. After waiting so long, they finally found a copy to send to me, and I finally have the Star Spinner Tarot in my hands. I'm so happy. I haven't used the deck, but I thought because I've watched so many walkthroughs of it and I didn't really see many people talk about the stories within this deck of cards, I thought I'll do something and share why I wanted this deck, the stories that I see in this deck, the stories that I see in those images that drew me to this deck and made me want to get it. In particular, the highlight of the deck is actually the chalices, the suit of chalices. It goes through the whole story of Little Mermaid. Let me tell you about it once I flip the camera around and share it with you. At the same time, I was kind of disappointed with the guidebook just because the guidebook doesn't explicitly talk about the hidden stories. So this is the point of this video. If you're thinking of buying the Star Spinner Tarot, I suggest you watch my video and see if those stories resonate with you, see if it adds another layer, and if not, and you realize that these stories don't resonate, then good, at least you know it before you get it. I think these stories are worth looking through and hearing and seeing if you resonate with them. Of course, you should do your own research and see if the version of the story I'm telling actually is accurate. I did some research, but I can't say I proof-checked everything or proof-read everything. Myths are not set in stone. The version of my story might be valid because, I heard it from my mom or something else. Just watch this video, tell me what you think, and if you enjoy these stories or deep dive into this deck, please leave a like and subscribe. Let me know if you like deep dives into other decks. I tend not to do those because I feel like it's very deck audience specific. Like if you don't own the deck, you might not be too interested in the stories behind the deck and the cards that I see. That is my opinion, especially because the book doesn't really mention anything except for the moon. I think the moon has a light mention of Chang'e. So I'm going to turn the camera around and you guys just enjoy and hear about the stories in this deck. So the first story that I saw in the Star Spinner Tarot that I really wanted to share, let's go by order, right? It's the story of Chang'e and Hou Yi. So Chang'e can be seen in this picture, the moon, and you can sort of see the story of Hou Yi, who was her husband, in the sun, sort of, okay? I think I mentioned this in the intro, but I feel kind of disappointed how much of this was not included in the stories here. I don't know if... So, for example, for the moon, she does mention this. Can you see that? A faithful wife who once guarded a seed of immortality. But for this one, you don't see the mention of Hou Yi at all, which is really interesting because the husband is Chang'e's husband, right? So your question might be, why did this depict a woman instead of, Hou Yi, right? The man. Okay. So to give you more of a background to this story right now, Hou Yi and Chang'e were both married, but it was during an era where there were 10 suns in the sky, and 10 suns was unbearable. It burned the crops, it hurt the people. They were supposed to take turns one by one to appear in the sky, but at this point in time, these suns were really mischievous, or they were just bored of going one by one. So all 10 came at one shot. So 10 burning the crops, hurting people, their skin, everything. So Hou Yi decided he needed to do something, and he went out there and shot 9 of the suns down. You can see this here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So if you are wondering why there were 9 birds that were falling behind with the yellow things, is because Hou Yi shot these 9 suns down. And there was only one sun left now, who has to come out every day. And this one sun is still flying, and this female is a representation of that sun, I think to mirror the Chang'e in the moon. As a reward for shooting the 9 suns down, Hou Yi was given that seed of immortality, which Chang'e ate in the end to rise to the moon. So there was some story why Hou Yi didn't eat the seed of immortality immediately. Some said that he wanted to show piety, and that's why he fasted for a set amount of days. In some stories, Chang'e was the greedy one who went and ate the seed. In some other stories, like the one depicted in the book, Chang'e was protecting it from someone, and to save that seed from being taken away, she swallowed it. And in some stories, she didn't know what it was. But I feel like if your husband killed 9 sons and was rewarded with a seed of immortality, and an evil man knows it, as his wife, you should be able to know it as well. So I think it's really a depiction on whether how forgiving we want to be to her, because you know, in olden days, sexism is everywhere. So maybe that's why you know, they said she was greedy. I love the rabbit here, because people always, in Chinese culture, the moon has a few beings, including Chang'e, including the jade rabbit, and actually there's a man who is consistently chopping down a tree which never sits down, which keeps growing and growing and doesn't get down. So that's the story behind the moon and the sun in the Star Spinner Tarot. Let me move on to the next one. This is just a quick mention because it's not really a story, I think most people who see this know this. This is clearly inspired by Peter Pan. You can see Tinkerbell right next to him. So I understand why this wasn't brought up, but clearly he is really inspired by Peter Pan. So nothing much to say, but what really drew me to this deck is the story that is depicted within the chalices. Okay, let me lay this out for you. The thing is, I think I've also mentioned this in the intro, but I can't help repeating myself. I've seen many walkthroughs of this deck, and I'm surprised that people don't really mention this. Okay, the first 3 cards show the Little Mermaid kind of you know, living her day-to-day life with her sisters. You know, 2 sisters, 3 sisters. She's looking at a cup. She looks wistful. She looks like she wants something new. Something new would be to actually so in a way, the story is mostly in order, but a bit out of order. You could have put this card here. So she's living her life, and then, you know, she sees a castle, she sees land, and she's wondering, you know, if she can go on land. This wouldn't be the next one, this would be the next one. She actually meets the prince. Maybe a statue of the prince fell through the ship, like the one in Disney, and she sees the handsome prince, and she falls in love with him, and she wants to get to know him. Okay, here she seeks maybe some sort of guidance from the other creatures. The thing is, I've looked through the books on a very high level. You don't see this mention with reference to the Little Mermaid. Okay, so in here, you know, she's looking at other fish. She's trying to see how she can actually achieve her dreams to be united with her prince up on land. And somehow she manages to turn into a human, leaving behind her life in the sea, right? Because 8 of Cups, 8 of Chalices, she leaves behind what she has already built for herself. As a princess, you can see the crown in all these cards, and then you don't see the crown here, right? I feel like I hope these stories that I'm telling you now, even though it's on a very, very summarized level, I hope it gives you another layer to work with when you work with the Star Spinner Tarot. You can see the crown that she wears. Here you can't see it, but basically she wore this crown up till the point she turned human. And I don't know if you guys know the story, but in any case, the prince was in love with her for a while. They were happy, and then he met someone else and wanted to get married to this new person instead of her, right? So she's really unhappy. And I think one of the, don't quote me on this, maybe I'm adding layers of my own stories here, but in some cases or in some versions of this myth or story, she needs to marry the prince to keep her legs. In some cases, she can't stand because standing on her legs gives her a lot of pain, and to maintain this form, she needs to marry the prince or die. And the prince fell in love with someone else, wants to marry someone else. In the 5 of Chalices, you can see her sisters all lost their hair. They actually sold their hair to the sea witch to get this dagger. What she needs to do now is kill the prince with that dagger so that she can return to the sea and still stay alive. Kill the prince to stay alive, return to the sea, and everything goes back to normal, except that she has to kill the love of her life. And that's why she's anguished here. There's that debt that she owes her sisters for selling all their hair. Her sisters are trying to save her, and this is the only way. They love her. She feels indebted to them. She feels like she needs to kill the prince so that, you know, she can stay alive and make their sacrifice not go to waste. And if you guys know the story, she actually couldn't go through with it. She jumps into the ocean and lets herself die as the prince and his new wife get married. But instead of dying, because of the actions she took, the self-sacrificial nature she took to let the love of her life marry his love of his life, God actually changed her into an air spirit. And this is, you can see her here dancing in the air happily. This is an outcome that she didn't expect. She was ready to give it all up, and instead she was turned into an air spirit. So I think in the original myth, this is all to do with like the I'm not sure whether it has to do with, but anyway, the whole god thing. Mermaids don't have a soul or something, but turning into an air spirit, there is a chance for her to go to heaven now, and this is the unintended outcome of this whole story. And here she is giving her blessings to the prince, even though he doesn't look anything like before, and his bride. She's giving that blessing to them and telling them, good, I'm happy, you're happy, I'm glad things turned out the way that they did. Okay? So I hope this story adds a layer to why these were drawn like this. Why, you know, there's a dagger, why people were bald. Because I've seen people doing walkthroughs and not knowing the background story of the Little Mermaid here. I mean, the quartz doesn't really show, but I love this card. Okay, I love this card. And so the story behind this one, I think most people, when they see a Chinese dragon, they kind of assume that Chinese dragons are really similar to Western ones. And there are a few archetypes of Western dragons, right? The killer, ferocious ones, the really wise but really cryptic ones. Chinese dragons are kind of like that, but more wise and cryptic, but more kind. Okay, Chinese dragons or Eastern dragons tend to be very kind, wise, and have your back, and they just want to help. So this is why a dragon is the king of chalices. I've seen some confusion on that and wanted to clear that up. For the swords, this is the only one that I can see a story, and it's not really super related. I think because people see her in a coffin, they think it's strange. They feel like, is this death? In the story of Snow White is also in a glass coffin so that people can see her beauty. And guess what? The prince saw her beauty, kissed her, and she came back to life because somehow that kiss has so much suction that it sucked the poisoned apple out of her throat. I don't know, but anyway, this is not death. She's taking a break, she's resting because, you know, she's poisoned. Her body's trying to process that poison that put her in a glass coffin. So I just want to clear that up based on the myth that I know. You see, it doesn't talk about the myth that is behind this one. This is why I felt like I needed to make this video. For the rest of the swords, I do feel like this has a backstory. At the same time, I didn't do enough research to see if there's a story about a peacock being attacked. I feel like in the recesses of my memory there's something like that, but I can't say for sure. If anyone knows what it is, please leave a comment down below. And if you enjoyed my story so far of the Star Spinner Tarot, please leave a like and subscribe. It will help my channel out. Clearly, this is Aladdin. Aladdin and his 3 wishes. Even though this is the genie, 3 wishes, Aladdin, you don't see this mentioned at all because this has the very traditional meaning, but it doesn't really talk about Aladdin. At first, I got a bit confused because the three of Pentacles shouldn't be a wish fulfillment card, right? It should not be. But in a way, Aladdin works with the genie to have a collaborative relationship, and in the end, Aladdin did wish the genie to be free, right? So that is that kind of you know, you give me something, I give you something, let's build a better life together kind of vibe, which I really enjoy. And the 4 of Pentacles is clearly Rapunzel with her long hair, reading in the tower. She's being kept away from the world by her witch mother. So there is that sense of the 4 of Pentacles there. One of my favorite fairy tales that people don't talk about enough, and Frozen was meant to be like this, I guess, at first, and then they made it all about sisterhood. I was a bit disappointed because I wanted to see the Snow Queen. I wanted to see Kay. We are looking at this from the point of view of Gerda, right? The main character. I don't know if people know this story, this fairy tale, but you should watch it. It all starts when an evil mirror was shattered. And when this evil mirror was shattered, it turned into many fragments and it poisoned humanity, right? A shot of this mirror entered Kay's eye and entered Kay's heart, and he turned mean, cold, angry with Gerda, angry with their grandmother or whoever that old woman is in this original story. And the Snow Queen came to collect him, and Gerda goes on a long journey to try to save him from the Snow Queen. So when I see this, I do see that 5 of coins and how your eyes can be poisoned to the world because of prejudice, because of there's so much I can go into this card, but I love how it's depicted here. It's just one simple image reminds me of the whole story. I kind of wish that the rest of the suits were done more like the Little Mermaid, where it goes through stages in the story, because Gerda goes through so much. Okay, I don't know if this is Gerda. She could very well be, because Gerda does stop at another witch's house to help out, and she forgets Kay. She forgets Kay until she until she sees these are strawberries, but in the story, Gerda forgets about Kay because the witch causes her to forget about it. Kay gave her a rose or some sort of flower. Now I can't really remember. So please guys, just take the overall high level myth. And the witch buries the flowers and doesn't allow her to see those flowers. But one day, somehow her tears or something, because she felt like she lost something, the flowers sprout and she remembers that her whole point of her journey is to save Kay. And in this image, I do see that kind of memory. 6 of coins is about exchange, of course, and being generous. So it could also talk about how Gerda was actually helping this nice witch, and this nice witch was doing this to her because she loved Gerda, but it's a selfish kind of love. But there's the kind of exchange where she gives her heart. Another myth that I love this myth, the 7 of coins, and it's perfect. It's perfect for the 7 of coins. Again, you don't see it here. Any sort of the myth that is called 6 wands, and it's perfect for this 7 of coins. So you can see that the 7 of coins are the 6 wands and herself. There are 7 halos around their heads. A king has 7 children, 6 boys and 1 girl in his previous marriage. A witch makes a promise with him to save him from the forest that he is in, to marry her daughter in exchange for, you know, saving him from that forest and showing him the light. So he agrees, but he's worried for his children, so he hides them away. But his new wife finds them anyway, and with one step of a finger, she turns all the sons into swans. They can only turn back to human for 15 minutes in the evening. The little boys flew to try to find how to break this curse, and they found out, and they told their sister. Within that 15 minutes, they told the sister, you need to sew shirts that are made of nettle. So nettle really hurts your fingers as you sew them. 6 shirts of nettle, and you are not allowed to speak for, I think, 7 years or something like that. Don't quote me on that again. The time doesn't matter. It's just talking about how you need to stay patient. So there is that patient nature, because this 7 of coins is about waiting for something to sprout, right? So she doesn't speak for about 7 years, and during that time, someone falls in love with her. Another king from a neighboring country falls in love with her, marries her, but her mother-in-law didn't like her at all. So when she gave birth to children, even though she can't speak, her mother-in-law kills those children and accuses her of eating her own children, cannibalism. And because she can't speak, she can't defend herself, right? She cannot defend herself. And because of repeated events, maybe like 3 children in, where she sees her children being taken away and killed by her mother-in-law but is unable to say anything, they wanted to burn her on the stake for being a witch, and her husband was unable to provide any evidence contrary to that fact. So when she was on the stake, she only finished 5.5 shirts, and but because the time of not speaking was just happened to be when she was on the stake, she just threw these shirts on her brothers, who all turned back to human, except for the last one, who had 1 arm missing. So he's left with 1 winged arm, and she finally breaks her silence to tell her husband everything that happened. And instead of burning her on the stake, her mother-in-law got the brunt of it. So that's the story behind this. I don't think I mentioned it very well, but can you imagine this girl not speaking for 7 years, her fingers hurting from sewing these shirts of nettle for her brothers? That is the 7 of coins. An honorary mention for the 8 of coins. I know Katie Flowers says she loves this card. I kind of don't like this card out of the whole deck, just because the whole deck has such rich mythology and allusions to mythology, and this one is too modern for me. I wish there was some sort of a time myth or a clock worker kind of fairy tale instead of this one, if he wanted to talk about time. Okay, that's it about all the fairy tales in the Star Spinner Tarot. I didn't see any more. If you know any other stories that are in these cards, please feel free to comment below. I would love to know them. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you guys have a great rest of the day, and you take care. Bye!